Welcome to the late once again. Here we are once again. It's really late. Let's cut on this light. Yeah. Um. Ah. I was thinking about unlikely redemptions, and I saw this in the paper. Jail saved my life from, I guess, from yesterday, if you want to call it, Monday, July 23rd, 2018. From a heroin den to amazing rehab, success at Rikers. Jail saved my life. A healthy looking latent Lydiant Rivera above at Rikers looking like a different person compared with the ravaged woman photographed by the Daily News on the street of the Bronx. Yes, Bro King, appreciate you. Yeah, I was just looking at a story. I'm surprised people folks are here so quickly, and I'm just looking at the story. Nothing much is going on. It was something that was interesting to me. So, um, what was the story about? I gotta find this story. Thank you for the folks coming through. People do get redeemed. So I just thought this was something that would be interesting to share. They said jail was my rehab. In a place that's normally reserved for less than rehab, a place that shows you how to become a better criminal. What's up, Vinny G? I appreciate that. The lady was talking about drug addicts' remarks highlights the lack of treatment on outside. So basically, she got treatment on the inside of the jail. Shout out to Vinny G. Shout out to Bro King. Anybody else that's there. And the lady basically made something for herself. And it got me to thinking, about, redemption. Redemption can come from anywhere. It says Miss Rivera was living a life of almost unfathomable despair a year ago, sleeping inside an open air heroin den in the South Bronx. The rail thin Rivera spent her waking moments scrounging around for her next hit. She had just survived two overdoses. She weighed close to 100 pounds, and the veins in her arms were so badly damaged that she was injecting drugs into her neck. Mm. Rivera's agonizing existence was chronicled in a Daily News story on the horrors of the heroin epidemic in the South Bronx. Some 14 months later, Rivera is locked up at Rikers Island, and she convinced the jail saved her life. The 39-year-old mother has received constant doses of methadone and other badly needed medications for the first time in years. Rivera has also benefited from intense counseling sessions and other services available in the jail system. She states that jail was my rehab, Rivera told the news. In an interview at Rikers Jail, made Rivera realize how much I could lose it all in a minute. She spent her last 5 months behind bars on shoplifting. I'm not bringing this up. It's because a lot of times in life, we look at people, we judge them. We say, hey, what's going on, sis, dad? We say, hey, maybe that person will never be anything. Maybe, because people have bad breaks in life, they just go through whatever they go through. And, when I see somebody in jail saying that jail saved their life, it does catch my attention. I almost dismissed the story because I looked at it like, could jail really save somebody's life? And I know some people personally where, they may need to get locked up because, if you don't go to jail, then you may die on the streets because they're talking about this lady is her veins collapsed so much that she's injecting stuff into her neck. I mean, I don't know if anybody understands about collapsed veins and heroin and how that thing goes. You can really find yourself in a crazy situation when you have veins collapsing. That means you were, really going in. You were taking it to another level. And then there's also the heroin epidemic that's, sweeping across the country and stuff like that in certain places. And yes, there is a heroin epidemic still, for some reason, up in the Bronx, South Bronx specifically and whatnot, certain places. It's unfortunate, and thoughts and prayers with those people still struggling with drug addiction. But this isn't about drug addiction. This isn't about that situation. Even though it does matter. This is just pretty much about saying that hey, even the worst of situations can turn somebody around. Picture being in a situation where listen, all hell broke loose and your life is in shambles and you don't know what to do and you don't know where to go. You don't know how to pick up the pieces, and then you find yourself in jail. I mean, this is how the woman was looking. I don't know if you could see it. She wasn't looking like much of herself, and then you turn around, and then not too long after, she looks like a healthy, young lady or healthy young lady or, in her 30s or late 30s and whatnot, and she's, getting herself together. So it's really interesting about, what takes a person or makes a person feel like, they can get things together. Sometimes in the middle of nowhere, it takes you getting it together, and this fan is not coming on. Sometimes it takes you going to the middle of nowhere to finally get yourself together. And also, too, I have to say it, welcome to the late shift, but this live stream may or may not be for you, which is fine, and I do have my robe on, my sexy blue robe. So that's just what it is, so we kind of just go from there, but I thought this was something that would be interesting for me to talk about and something I could share with other people, so it's kind of crazy. Rivera was saying that Rivera said users blamed her and accused her of being a snitch and attacked more than one woman. Oh no, that's something else. So I'm not gonna go into that part. Anyway, I don't have to go into reading this whole thing, but I think it's just a situation where it leaves the basis of the groundwork for where people can be redeemed, and yes, a redemption song comes to mind. Says that, I mean, people can be redeemed in the most likeliest of places. And it's important not to judge a book by its cover, whether you feel like folks are, you know, serious or sincere or not. Only the weak-minded can't survive. Well, it is something to be said, Scott King, about being weak-minded. Where we are weak, we try to make strong. We make the attempt to be made strong. I mean, not everybody has the strength, or those folks that's able to recover and get through things. Everybody struggles with something. I mean, no matter how upright, no matter how wise you think you are, no matter how good you think things are going, somebody's going through something. Somebody's facing some kind of hell, some kind of personal, demons that, exist behind the scenes. Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men, and women at that thing too. So when I saw this story, like I said, I kind of dismissed it because I was like, the paper ain't got too much in there. They talking about Trump and, they talking about, business and, all this politics and all this negativity. And then there's, of course, local politics that you folks probably don't want to know about, Cuomo and, ethics scandals and, all kind of stuff, like I said, a lot of stuff revolving around Trump. So I said, it is what it is. Too many quitters in the world today. I agree with you, Scott King. I definitely agree with you. There are too many people that quit. There are too many people that give up on themselves as it pertains to life, as it pertains to what's going on. Just because you go through hell doesn't mean you can't get through it, doesn't mean you can't overcome and come out on the other side of it. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people that quit and give up on themselves before they know, which way to go, which way is up, which way is, the best way to go about things, and it's kind of crazy, So like I said, I've seen many situations. I've known people, personally in my family, personally in other people's families, just people coming in contact, people I've heard of stories of, people getting caught up, going on bad breaks or drug addictions or, just getting, caught up with the wrong crowd, and then, you kind of like left to be, to the wayside. I remember there was this story of a Dominican man. This was around the time of the crash, like 2008, 2009, that time where, the bubble burst and people were losing houses and things were going on. And a man who basically went into debt, he just went into debt, couldn't pay his debt, was about to lose his dream home, and stuff like that. Instead of him letting the bank take his home and let his family just go on about their business and they try to recover from it, the man killed himself, his wife, and his two kids because he couldn't afford to pay for the mortgage. He couldn't afford to keep the lifestyle going. And it's kind of sad, it's kind of crazy how things go, because you find yourself in a situation saying, wow, looking at this, like, did the man really have to take his family's life? Did you really have to give up? That's why I guess it alludes to what you were saying, Scott King. Unfortunately, there's a lot of quitters in the world. There's a lot of people who may choose, to be weak in certain ways. But, I mean, weakness is a part of, I guess this is existent with what we face and stuff like that. You look at your weakness and try to make it strong and try to become strong. Try to look for that inner strength, for that strength out there in the universe. Some say from the strength of God and whatnot. If that's your thing, if not, I understand that too. But for the most part, I encourage people not to try to give up on themselves. I mean, you never know. You never know. Like I said, a woman saying that jail saved her life. I don't know if I personally would have came out and said jail saved my life. I don't know. Like I said, but who knows? Who knows? Like I said, I know a couple of people personally who need jail, who may need jail, who may need to get arrested, who may need the guidance or be pulled away from the streets or be pulled away from, negative influences, people who, have no hope, no guidance, people who come from broken homes and stuff like that. So that's why when the lady said jail saved her life, I was just like, okay, you know, um, what could this be? What was the difference? Like she was saying in here, in the story that I'm reading, she was saying she couldn't believe, that it was her, when she was looking back, a year ago. She it looked like she didn't care, but now she does. She's got people around her that care in a place that you really don't want to come, but, they call it, God save you, I guess you're saying, it's some divine intervention with going to jail and, realizing, you're at your lows. I mean, because she's still currently in jail, but you say to yourself, does it take that? Sometimes it takes people going to their low points before they actually start to make it, back. The book will make you stronger if you can understand what you read. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I give you that, Scott King. I definitely give you that. You definitely can get stronger if you understand exactly what you're going into, getting into, and whatnot. Who wants to go to jail before they get it together? But sometimes the reality is that the unlikely redemptions come when you're at your lowest point, when you feel like there's nothing left, when you feel like nobody else cares, when you feel like everybody has abandoned you, when you feel like nothing else is gonna work. I mean, some of us have to get to that point. Some of us have to get to the bottom of the barrel. Some of us have to get to the lowest of the low in society, before we actually begin to appreciate life and see things for what it is. Hold on, let me take a little sip of this. That's good. Yeah, yeah. If you read it only. Yeah, I get you, Scott King. Yeah, definitely. But you got to be willing. You definitely got to be willing. It says Rivera still has a long road ahead in her recovery. It remains to be seen whether she can stay clean when she's thrust outside jail walls later this week. So the reality is that she's saying jail saved her life, and the real challenge comes when she's thrust back out into the streets, and she's in the real world, and she's actually doing things. But for now, under the supervision and care, of guidance and people around her that are actually trying to get her clean and get her, to a point where she can be redeemed. This is what it is. So it's up to her. I get where you were coming from with that, Scott King. You have to really believe, that you can overcome. But it just goes to show that we all struggle with things. And this can happen to anybody. This can happen to people we love. This can happen to people we work with. It can happen to people we used to be with in relationships and stuff like that. You never know. Anybody can face addictions, be it they sexual, be it they substance abuse. Anything can happen. Where somebody falls on bad times, financial things could happen, gambling situations could happen. So it is an unlikely redemption that comes in, the most strangest of ways. I mean, what is the saying that goes that says, God uses odd instruments and strange means, to bring forth, those things in people that, I guess they never thought that could happen. Being a victim of society is no excuse. Yeah, I agree. Being a victim of society is no excuse, Scott King. I mean, there's a lot of people who are victimized in a lot of different ways. I mean, now not to say that being a victim is irrelevant, but at the same time, you have a choice of whether or not you want to stay down or you want to get up, you want to, make something out of yourself, I mean, because we all go through stuff. I mean, I come from the projects. I can use the fact that I come from the projects that, I came from a broken home myself, and, there was, different issues in there, drug abuse and all kind of stuff that was going on. I could definitely, use that as an excuse and say, hey, that's just my life, and always me and stuff like that, and I'm a poor upbringing or corrupt upbringing, whatever you want to call it. But at the same time, I try not to, look at that, and I try to say, okay, what is there to glean from that? What is there to gain? You will become a victim, but you can only be a victim one time, as an old timer told me, before you become a participant. So do you want to participate in your own self-victimization, or yeah, I guess it is self-victimization if it's coming from you, but do you want to participate in this negativity, in the nonsense, or do you want to try to rise above it? Like the lady, the young lady in the story, she's talking about how, some time ago, yeah, you fight the good fight. She was basically doing drugs. She was doing so much drugs that you, instead of just putting it in your vein, you putting it in your neck. I don't know if people understand how you know much of a point you have to be to when you have a collapse. You have a collapsed vein. I mean, that means you really pressing on it. That means you're really, pulling the blood out there trying to get something. And it's kind of crazy like that. So, I mean, so she's struggling to navigate. On the outside, she would have to navigate 3 distant difference to get the care that she needs, and she's just in a social situation, that's pretty chaotic. But like I said, she got help, but she's at least trying to make the attempt. So, for this young lady in the story, I wish her all the best, and I wish anybody else out there all the best that is trying to just maintain and stay above ground, because it's a fight for anybody. I tell anybody it's a fight just to be normal. There's a lot of people out there that's struggling to be normal, struggling to get through whatever ailments, struggling to get through whatever, insecurities or shortcomings. Like I said, I struggle with things too. I sometimes, struggle with weight. You can have, issues with food and, just trying to be normal yourself and just looking at yourself and saying, hey, I'm okay, I'm good and whatnot. I'm not, there's nothing wrong with me. There's a lot of us trying to fight to be normal. That's what it is. There's a lot of us that is not as normal as we would like to believe. And I can't stand it when there's people who act like they have no problems, they have no issues, and everything is always good and everything is always peaceful and pure. No, you're lying. You're lying. If you meet somebody who never has problems and they're always smiling, it is what it is. Time to change tactics. I would say to her, yeah, it is, Scott King. It is time for her to change tactics. And hopefully, the young lady in this story, hopefully she does change tactics. Hopefully she does, go and navigate, herself in a way, where she started in jail. Because sometimes it really does take people being at a lowest point. Sometimes it does take people on the verge of death to be locked up and be put in a situation where, hey, they gotta get it together that way. It's kind of rough, but like I said, I wish her all the best, because when she's saying the jail was her rehab, at first I looked at it and I'm like, it's true, I guess. And I felt bad because I said, I don't want to judge. I don't want to dismiss. I want to say, hey, look, you know what? That is true, because I've known people who've went to jail, who've gotten it together, who've actually said, you know what, look, I want this second chance and I receive it and I want to be redeemed and I want to, have another shot at society, another shot at life. And I know this may not be something for everybody. Like I said, that's why I say this live stream may or may not be for you. I understand that. What I'm talking about is some really heavy, hardcore stuff, some drug addiction, people, in the most unlikely of situations. What's going on, Corey Bracy? Just stopping by to speak. Nothing wrong with that. Appreciate that. I was just talking about somebody here, Corey Bracy, who basically went to jail, and the jail was her rehab. She was saying she was somebody on heroin, and she got caught up and she got arrested and whatnot. Sent to jail, and it was a way for her to try to get her life back. She was looking like this, about a year ago, and now she looks like this again, trying to get herself healthy. And the young lady is trying to stay, above water. She's still locked up, and she's going to be getting out later this week. So, it's kind of a situation where you say, you know what, redemption can come from anywhere, and nobody should be judged, just because they made some bad breaks and they're trying to get it together. If anything, kudos to this young lady trying to get herself together. I can only eat hot dogs and bologna so many times in 1 month myself. Yeah, I know what that's like, Scott King. I remember when I was younger, we had Franks and beans for about 3 months. It wasn't the most pleasant of situations, but people go through struggles. People go through things and whatnot. That's just what it is. But thank you, Corey, for coming through. Much love to you. Peace to you and your family. Peace to you out there, in the state that you're from. I know. Appreciate everybody out there. Thank you for everybody being there. Appreciate the folks that came through in the beginning, the lurkers, the people doing other stuff. I know there's some other folks out there, that's doing some other things, and I appreciate you. Thank you for coming through. I know there's a lot going on in the community tonight. I appreciate my late night creepy crawlers, or my late shift people. Welcome to the late shift with Mel. Just talking about redemption. I don't know if you folks have any thoughts out there. I know Scott King has been saying some things. I wonder what any of you else feel about redemption and whatnot. So Corey, yeah. There's much love to everybody, though. I mean, I wonder what you folks feel about redemption. I mean, do you think redemption can come from somebody, that, who gets locked up and, they try to rehab, or, people get caught up in a situation? How am I, Art? I'm doing actually pretty good, pretty auspicious, if anything. Auspicious, not auspicious, auspicious, if that's the word. That may not be the right word. I've been laying low for a while. So, well, it's like that, Scott King. Sometimes you gotta lay low. Sometimes you gotta, refigure and rework some things and whatnot. But we all go through some things. We all struggle with some stuff, and it's just like that. I just hate when people. Hate is a strong word. I don't like when people try to pretend like they don't go through anything and nothing happens. Um, you know. Thank you, Corey. Um, I don't like when people go through stuff and try to front and act like, there's no problems, and that they never face anything, and everything is perfect. If everything ain't perfect with your life, then that's what it is. So I mean, it's just what it is. Just don't be afraid to live life and face life, and see what's going on, and be honest with yourself and whatnot. See where you're coming from. Sad to say, there are people that don't feel safe unless they're incarcerated. This is true, sis. Dad. This is true. I mean, unfortunately, there are people that want to go to jail. I'll tell you a story, a quick story. I was working in the Bronx one night, and a man was trying to basically go to sleep, and I was working in a homeless shelter, and one of the guys attacked the other guys in his sleep, because he had some mental issues or something. So one of the guys coming from prison gets up, and he's like, "Look, I don't care. Let me at the guy. I'll go back to prison." And he went to go around and get a gun. Of course, I stopped him from coming into the facility with the gun, but he was ready to go back to jail. He told me straight up. The guy told me, he's like, "Look, I did 7 years in jail. I'm ready to go back. I don't care, whatever." And it was kind of crazy. You still always get my watch time. Oh, you can take that to the bank. Thank you, Scott King. I appreciate having your watch time. Nothing wrong with that. I appreciate everybody that comes through and just checks me out and whatnot. I do need the watch time. That's one of those things. But definitely, I try to give you some content. I try to give you some perspective on things. And I know this is not for everybody, so I'm not going to sit there and expect you to sit here and watch the whole thing or even engage. But I know people go through things. I know people struggle with stuff, and redemption comes in the most unlikely of places. Even in jail. Who wants to think that jail would save their life? Maybe I'm somebody where if I was in a situation like that, I have to put myself in this person's shoes. If I was somebody who was addicted to heroin and I was out in the streets and I had nowhere to go, or I felt I had nowhere to go, would I feel like jail saved my life, or being around people that cared about me in that situation saved my life? And maybe some people feel like life is over, but the problem with that comes, and I hate to say it, but if you play devil's advocate, the problem comes is that if you feel jail saved your life, what happens when you actually get out onto the streets? So that's something that they definitely explored and they talked about in here and whatnot. Her slipping back into it. I mean, they almost looked at it as like a divine intervention with this lady, going back into jail. So it's kind of crazy. It says former inmates with drug problems are 129 times more likely than the general population to suffer a fatal overdose within 2 weeks of their release, according to a widely cited study. Incarceration confers significant harm to patients and significant risk factors. Uh, interesting. I mean, hopefully, when she gets out, it's not a situation where she relapsed, but it's definitely a possibility. I mean, there's definitely something to be said about redemption and whatnot, and how much it takes hold, and where it should be, how it should come. I know this may not be the thing that people want to talk about. They called me John Gotti when I was in prison for some reason. Well, I don't know. Maybe you look like you were Italian or something. If you're husky or you got weight on you, and you look like you would hurt somebody, maybe they call you John Gotti for some reason or whatever the case. You sound like, you're somebody that's, not, not, something, somebody you want to play with, if you go to prison. But that's another story all in itself. But who knows? I mean, sometimes we need these situations, to take us back. We need to be removed. We need to, be brought to ourselves, and say, hey, wow, this is what it is. Um, I'm seeing a whole lot of other messages in the chat or whatever the case may be, other place, other chats. I'm seeing other things. Shout out to those other people doing other things. Mansfield, the reformatory. Oh, okay, okay. I've heard that before. I've heard that before. That sounds familiar. I'm not gonna lie to you. I know the Mansfield name is definitely famous. Hollywood royalty right there. Mansfield. Jane Mansfield. But that's another story right there too. Um, I don't know. Shawshank. Yeah. Shawshank Redemption. But the name Mansfield is actually a famous name of an actress, I think, who died, Jane Mansfield. She was very famous and whatnot. They probably use that for the Shawshank Redemption or something, or maybe that's a real thing. And I've never seen all of Shawshank Redemption. I'm not trying to have a prison live stream, but that's what it sounded like. Some people were like, "Look, I don't want to talk about this. This Melville having a prison live stream right now." And I'm not trying to have a prison live stream. I'm literally just talking about redemption and the power of redemption, the power of being able to pick yourself up and be redeemed and come from a standpoint where you're not ready to put on your grave clothes and just give up. Because I've had people in my life, who had to fight, and claw and scratch and go after every piece, just to get where they need to be or where they're trying to go. Like I said, I know some people want to talk about this is too serious, too deep, and that's fine. That's cool. I ain't mad at you. Thank you for all that. But I don't know. When I look at this young lady and I look at this situation, I say, hey, you explore the possibilities. She said, but for the grace of God, I feel great. I'm not missing any part of my last high. She said, I feel good about myself and I know I could do better. I know I have a lot to offer for the better. I just need to keep staying on my recovery to help others that I want to help. And that's real. I think, she needs to stay on her recovery. I think it's something that is important, because you never know, and then there's the presence of the religious aspect and whatnot, that she may be into, So, I mean, like I said, I pull for people like this, especially, when it comes from a real place, when people really want to get themselves together. And then there's the temptation. There's always the other side of it where people, are being drawn back into a lifestyle or, being tempted and told, hey, maybe your life doesn't have value or the exploitation of it and whatnot, the people making money off of this type of things. I've had people who've been in situations like this with family members and stuff like that, and it's not easy. It's not easy to deal with. It's not easy to get through. I've had family members that have gone through this type of thing, and I know the power of second chances, the power of 12-step programs and NA and AA and stuff like that. They think those things do work. That's why this does hit home to me. This is not just a story. This is not just a live stream, just for watch time, even though watch time comes of it. This is something that I feel I need to talk about because this is something that doesn't get highlighted, about rehab, about second chances, about redemption. Sometimes we see people a lot of times in society and we're quick to write them off because, what? They don't match, with our, preconceived notions of who they should be or what the status quo is. And any one of us at any time could fall. Any one of us at any time could be addicted to something, be it drugs, be it sex, be it money, be it power, be it gambling, anything, not to preach to folks, but like I said, I thank you still for the two folks that are still here, I'm gonna keep going as long as it makes sense, and then we go from there, but for the most part, three strikes makes sense to me still. Well, I mean, I don't know about the three strikes thing, but it depends on the crime. If it's a non-violent offense, then maybe you shouldn't do the three strikes thing. But I get it if it's a violent offender and you want to do three strikes and you're putting people's lives in danger and you're trying to put people in the casket, then hey, maybe it's something where you got to do what you got to do, and I could understand that. But if it's a nonviolent offense, if it's something where you're mainly hurting yourself and putting yourself through the ringer and stuff like that, I wouldn't be so quick to judge you and throw you away and just say, hey, it's nothing. So my thing is just like, okay, people deserve a chance. Even the violent offenders, you look at it and you say, well, is there a possibility? Is there a chance? Yeah, no, but I understand where you're coming from too, Scott King. I mean, you don't want to have people out there just, getting a whole bunch of chances out there to do something violent and crazy and corrupt and just, kill up and go after any and everybody they want. It's a situation where, you have within reason and stuff like that. When it's a situation when it comes to something like drug abuse or addiction or whatever the case may be, you want to make sure you're there for people when you help them and whatnot. Even like in Seattle, they have this thing where, they have like safe injection sites. That's what it is. And I was forgetting this for the longest. In Seattle, they have safe injection sites, places where, they try to get people and counsel them and whatnot. Good night to you, sis, Dad. I appreciate you for coming through. All the best to you as well. Thank you for being here, So, I'm still doing my thing, thank you. So I know then there was one. Um, in Seattle, there's safe injection sites. There's places where, where the people that, struggle with heroin addiction and stuff like that, they do have, different things that they do in counseling and try to rehab them and try to get them off the streets. It's important to just, care about folks and get them to where they need to be. It's still saying I got two people in the chat. I should be at one person right now. Anything having to do with kids, I say, where's the chair? Wow. There's a lot of people that feel that way. There's definitely a lot of people that feel that way, Scott King. When it comes to children and children being hurt, that's a whole other ball of wax. That is a hard one. I'm not gonna lie to you. That is a hard one to fight against because it's like, where do you put it? Let's say you do give them the chair. Let's say you do judge a person. Let's say you do, put them in that vein. Who's to say that that person wouldn't change? Now I'm at one person. Okay, cool. Now it's just me and you, Scott King. We're just in the chat together, just working it out, But I say, when it comes to stuff with children, Scott King, it can get dicey because it's like yeah, it's punishment and things that should be exacted, but it does come to a point where you say to yourself, what happens if that person does change? What happens if that person is redeemed? It's hard enough to just, not give up on yourself and then to be given up on by society, and then, the death penalty. And that would be actually a good live stream to talk about, like to have about the death penalty, certain situations. That you probably gave me an idea there, Scott King. I'm not gonna lie to you, whether or not the death penalty is something that should, still be, something that's sought after or pushed. I think there's still certain states that do the death penalty. I imagine there's still certain states or whatnot, depending on what the crime is. I don't know what those states are. Maybe you do, but redemption is a thing. It's a thing that's hard to come by sometimes. Because it's one thing to try to redeem yourself, in your own conscience and the eyes of God, and then the eyes of people and stuff like that. So it's one of those things. It's one of those things. It's one of those things where you wonder about it and whatnot. I will be judge, jury, and executioner if it's my kid. Believe that. Well, I mean, yes, Scott King. I mean, and I can't argue with you on that one. It's hard to argue because the reality of it all is that when if you put yourself in somebody else's shoes, what if it was your kid? What if it was somebody you loved and cared about? Who was taken? Would you just be so quick to forgive? And it reminds me of a story that happened, or something that happened recently. Where it was a pizza delivery guy. He was a I guess an adult though, and he was killed, by an attacker, black guy. I hate to say it, and they were trying to rob him for his money, and the guy that attacked him was on drugs. The guy that attacked him was on drugs, and the father came into the courthouse. The father of the deceased, guy who was the pizza guy, came in and he forgave the kid who killed his son, who was obviously on drugs and going through some things himself. And that forgiveness is something that's hard to come by, especially, when somebody's taking your child or somebody is, come after somebody you love. It's like, who wants to, who wants to have to deal with that? Even the mother of the, kid that killed the other guy's son was saying she was shocked. She was shocked that like the father, of the slain son would have forgiveness towards her son, and they had a moment where they embraced each other in the court, and they hugged each other, Drugs is never good. A good enough excuse to give me. Oh well, I mean, I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it is. Scott King. But when it comes to drugs, when it comes to what people are influenced by and what they will do under the influence, it does play its part. It does have a significant place. Especially in it, especially when people are tempted by things. Not everybody is tempted by drugs. Not everybody is tempted to go through those different things and whatnot. So it's kind of crazy. I mean, it's not an easy thing to answer because I can't just say, you're wrong on that situation when it comes to somebody's child being taken away. I can't tell you not to feel that way. I'm not going to tell you not to want revenge. I can't tell you, that you shouldn't, go after it. Well, maybe I should tell you shouldn't go after it, but at the same time, if you did, I mean, would you be wrong for feeling that type of way, or would you be wrong to want retribution? So that's one of those things with that. But then, there's something to be said about redeeming, somebody or redeeming yourself. There's something to be said about, wanting to be redeemed, by society, paying your debt to society. And a lot of times when it comes to that, people don't, really honor that. Like that's why when I read the story, about the lady saying that, going to jail saved her life. What is there to be said about, repaying your debt to society? I mean, it's kind of unfortunate when it comes down to that. What's going on, Lulu? Appreciate you. And I say to you as well, Lulu, love you. This live stream may or may not be for you. I understand it may not be for a lot of people. I'm talking about redemption and second chances. I read a story about a lady who said that jail saved her life, her rehab. She looked like this, a year ago. Now she looks like this, in the picture right here. And she was talking about how things got so bad that, not the lung, the vein in her arm collapsed and she was taking it through her neck. I have been reformed or not? Have I been reformed or not? I don't know. Yeah, Lulu. So it was a story where I was just talking about redemption and the part it plays in society and stuff like that. Yeah. So like I said, this is it's a heavy subject matter in the live stream, and I know a lot of times with heavy subject matter, people may back away from me because I could get a little too serious. I can play around, I can joke, but I like to talk about stuff that's real. That's deep. Maybe I could be more entertaining. I don't know. Maybe I should have some strippers in the background or something. I don't know. But shout out to the women that do what they do. Um, I don't know. I just thought this would be something to talk about because a lot of times people don't sit down and talk about redemption, in a real substantive way. People getting second chances and just being forgiven, paying its debt to society. I mean, it's something to be said about going through something and really just trying to make that recovery and just come back from a situation and whatnot. And I understand if people don't want to hear about that. I understand if people don't care about, folks with drug abuse and situations where they may have abused certain situations or burned bridges and stuff like that. But, we all are people. We all have, our vices. We all have our lusts. We all have our angst about us. We all have our imperfections. Nobody is perfect. Some people, are less, or more imperfect than others, depending on who you are, what the day is, what's going on and whatnot, So that's where I was with it. Lulu, love you. That's where I was, definitely just going into that, and I understand, if folks don't want to hear that. I understand if it's not your cup of tea or here on another channel or another level anyway. Yeah, nah, it's all good. It's all good. Nah, I appreciate that, definitely. I don't know, Scott King. It's just a situation where I see things and I even had to catch myself, with the story. I had to make sure not to dismiss the story and take the time to read it myself and just look at it and say, you know what, this is possible. I've known people that have gone through this. I know people who have relapsed. When it comes to drug addiction, when it comes to rejection, do all people deserve second chances? Uh, do all people deserve second chances? It depends. It depends on the situation. It really depends on the situation. I mean, depends on who you are, Lulu, love you. I mean, do all people deserve second chances? It's a great question. I mean, murder. Wow. Wow. Yes. Yes. I would say even for murder, somebody deserves a second chance. They deserve, a chance to be redeemed. I said it depends, but The reality is that no matter if you serve your debt or pay your debt to society, depending on who you are, especially if you murder somebody who was, law enforcement, and or somebody who was a political official, you're getting a chair. That's the end of that conversation. Depending on what state you're in, it's over. So even if you are redeemed, or even if you changed up, or found religion, or went through a 12-step program, or got counseling, sometimes there is no coming back. You can be redeemed in your soul. You can be redeemed in your mind. You can be redeemed in the prison. But in society, that's a hard one right there. So, do all people deserve second chances? It really depends. It really depends on the offense. It really depends on how far you've gone. It really depends on who you've hurt, what you've done, what was the premise of it, who you've attacked, did you get to the heart of the matter. So it's kind of crazy like that. Oh, you mean in society? In society, do people deserve second chances? Yes, yes. It's a tough one. It's a tough one, Lulu. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. People in society, I do believe, deserve second chances, but the reality is, a lot of times they don't get it because people are judgmental. People, are definitely prejudiced. People are ignorant towards situations. I mean, listen, you could murder somebody, or even me, I murder somebody, God forbid, and I go to jail and I serve 20 years and I come out an old man, I'm 80 years old, people will still be afraid of me because, of preconceived notions or prejudices or judgments that come. They may never know the situation. It could have been somebody where, they were trying to wrong me, or something where I was young, or maybe I was under the influence of drugs and I did what I did. Not to say that it was right, but I still believe that, we have a correctional facility out there, in the world, different places that's supposed to be correctional facilities. It should stand for something. Scott King says it would depend to me on what the record looked like before your first murder. Well, see, that's good that you say that, Scott King, because at least you're coming from I believe, from a sensible point of view. Some people don't care what your record was before the murder. They don't care what your record was after the murder. They just look at it as murder. Murder is murder. You don't deserve a second chance. You shouldn't be allowed to do whatever it is that you need to do. It's kind of crazy. So, when it comes to that, Scott King, I definitely say it does depend, on what your record was. That does matter. It does matter. It does play a part. But even with your record, I still say, what, if you're coming from the right place, depending on what you did, how you present yourself, what you're willing to do, or if you're willing to pay your debt to society and really change, then you should be given a second chance in society. However, regardless of what you do, regardless of all the hoops that you jump through, some people are never going to accept you. Some people are never going to, look at you differently. They're always going to see you as that ex-con. They're always going to see you as that murderer, that felon, that thief, that drug addict. Some people will judge you even if you don't have a record. Like I said, you could never been the rest of the day in your life, and people were judging you because of some, preconceived notion that they have of you, some fear that they got going on in their mind. Some prejudice that they were taught as a child and grew up with, and it becomes that. Sometimes people look for the excuse to judge you. Sometimes people, look for the reason to say, what, hey, that person is nothing, and ain't never gonna be anything. But you have to be willing to rise above that and, fight against the odds and say, what, hey, I'm doing what needs to be done. Maybe I'm getting the counseling. Maybe I'm speaking to the people. Maybe I'm taking the training and the programs. Maybe I'm really trying to get an education, or trying to get myself right with God. Whatever it is that you need to do for yourself, finding different ways. It's like it's been said as by the philosopher, if you change the way you look at things, the way you look at things begin to change. So the question is, do you want to change? They should just move in to where nobody knows them. Simple. Yeah, once upon a time, that was that, and you could still do that. There's witness protection and places like that, but then it depends on your crime, because if you've done something that's sexual and you're a registered sex offender, forget it. You're You're not doing that. That's not happening. You're going to be in a situation where wherever you go, you have to be a registered sex offender, you know. And then even if you go for a job, let's say you will move to another place, you go to a job and you have to put down that you've been arrested for a felony. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that. You know, when you apply for jobs and on certain applications, there's a specific spot where it asks you, were you ever arrested for a felony? You know, and you have to check that, you know, truthfully, because if you don't and you say no, that's an automatic termination. I don't care who you are, you know, unless you're the CEO of the company, and then at that point you shouldn't have to apply for a job anyway. But that's another story, you know. Most sex offenders will never change. Well, see, but that's what you say, Scott King. You never know. Look at Casey Anthony, for example. Everyone knows who she is. It would be hard to blend in with society. Yes, yes, I definitely agree with you on that, Lulu. I mean, it's hard to blend in society depending on who you are and what the crime is, you know, especially if it's a high profile situation, you know. But if it's not a high profile case and, you know, it's a serious offense, who knows, maybe you have a chance. But then when it comes to work, you know, you have to, you know, accept something that may be considered menial, or, you know, how do you rise in the corporate world, or how do people trust you with money, you know, because people are less likely to trust ex-cons, you know, than they would be with somebody with no experience. People would trust somebody with no experience who's incompetent and don't know what they're doing over somebody who's an ex-con and clearly competent and has changed and paid their debt to society, because people have these preconceived notions about who people are. And redemption sometimes is hard to come by because, you know, there are people out there, you know, who don't want to let go. And it's hard. I mean, listen, we've all, yeah, Lulu, we've all had people who we've looked at and said, you know, I don't know about that person. You know, that person doesn't seem too cool, because you may find out something about this person's background, or you may look at that person a certain type of way and say, oh, this person used to steal, or, you know, that person did this or that person did that. I've worked in places where, in a homeless shelter, I hate to say this, amongst my coworkers, and when they found out that some of the people, some of the guys who came in there were sex offenders, some of the residents, they were treated unfairly, automatically. There were people who came in there with there who've changed their name, you know, and this is no exaggeration. I worked in homeless shelters, men's shelters, where guys came in there, changed their name. They're not the name that they were. People who worked there went and found out who the person was, Googled the person's name, found out their history, found out their sexual registry, all that stuff. And then all of a sudden you start to judge the person and treat them differently. Unfortunately, this is something that happens, you know, where people find out your history and find out who you are, and they think they know you. But the reality is that people do feel some type of way. You know, how would you feel if you were living across the way from somebody who was a registered sex offender, who may be somebody who's a churchgoer, who may be somebody who's reformed and changed their ways or appear to change their ways? I mean, you know, people do have issues with stuff like that. You know, they say, I don't care where you went. I don't care what you did. I don't care who you think you are. I don't care who you say you are. You know, I feel that you're this way and in that way. Like even Scott King was saying in the chat that, you know, when it comes to, you know, sex offenders, you know, they never change, you know, and that could be the case. You know what I'm saying? Do they deserve a second chance? That's a difficult situation. Well, yeah, well, I say they do, Lulu, but that's a lifetime of trying to prove. It puts you like this: you'll be quicker to redeem yourself for murder than a sexual crime. Like I said, I could go out and kill 50 people. I'll be redeemed quicker than if I committed a sexual crime against one person. You know, whatever it is. And I'm not saying I have, or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that, you know, you know, when you put murder versus certain crimes, there are people who are afraid of you for various reasons, but then there are other people who say, look, those things I could never forgive, you know, and that's just one of those things where it goes. It's a hard situation. It's a difficult situation. I mean, do these people deserve second chances? I say yes, they do. Is it a hard one to try to get? Yes, because, you know, people have fears, people have phobias. There are people who are willing to kill other folks because of stuff like that. You know, they don't want to hear about anything happening to their loved ones, or, you know, their child or something like that. You know, talking about redeem and all that stuff. You can be redeemed, but you're like a leper, you're over there somewhere. So it is a challenging thing. It is something about human nature, the judgment that comes with, you know, um, not being redeemed, the judgment that comes with being judged, the judgment that comes with being judged, of course, is judgment. The consequences that come with being judged, the ostracization of it and whatnot. So you find yourself in a situation, for those people that are in there, where you've paid your debt, you've did your time, you went through the trials and tribulations of the system, whatever that may be. They can always get a second chance. Look it up. Well, yeah, they can always get a second chance, Sky King, but at the same time, it's like Lulu was saying, when it comes to society, can you get a second chance? Of course, in the system, you can get a second chance. Of course, I guess from a, employment standpoint, you can be allowed to do certain things. But when it comes to society, once you commit certain crimes, once you go a certain way, I don't care what people say. They're not going to feel comfortable around you. They're not going to be open to receptive to you. They may not trust you around their kids. They may not trust you around their money. They may not trust you around their businesses, their family, friends, or whoever it may be. Hell, they may not even trust you around their worst enemies. Like I said, I don't know. You may not look too good over there. Something's going on. Watch yourself. And, it's kind of crazy like that. But it's something to be said about redemption. It's something to be said about um, believing in yourself that you can change. Because regardless of whether or not people redeem you, whether or not people believe in your redemption cry, your redemption song, you should believe in you. That's the biggest thing. Do you believe in you? When you've done something heinous or something that's unforgivable, I mean, there are few things in this world that are unforgivable, and once you found that thing, then, once you know that level, you've done some real things, some real crazy stuff if you got into a level where you cannot be forgiven, where things are in your heart to do, to go against certain things, certain constructs and whatnot, So I mean, it's like that. It's like that, I mean, second chances are hard to come by. It is a difficult situation, like Lulu was saying. You do, on one end, you do want people to get it. You do want people to, be upright. You do want people to do the right thing. And there is a thing such as forgiveness. Like it says, it's forgive, and you can be forgiven. But with that same measure of judgment that you give, you will be judged. So there are people out there who judge other folks for things, and they're not understanding what their limitations are, what their temptations are. Some people are quick to judge without understanding what they would do if they were in the very same situation, be it drug abuse or sexual abuse or, financial stuff or fraud, murder, whatever it may be. You don't get a second chance in the joint. Well, some people would beg to differ with you. Some people would beg to differ with you, Scott King. It depends on what you've done. Certain crimes you may not get a second chance with because in the joint, or jail more specifically, there's a code of ethics there or a code of justice there, that where they deal with people in a certain way. So you don't want to spend your time in protective custody just trying to, fight and make it too. Yeah, no, I know you were going there, Scott King. I definitely know. When it comes to that, yeah, there's probably no second chances in prison. Your only best bet is if you get into protective custody with that, because, there's certain crimes people are not playing with you with. They don't care who you are, what you think you've done, or whatever the case. You better have money and you better have lots of it, You better be like a Jared from Subway, you eat fresh and, pay that money, a pound of flesh, to try to stay, safe or whatever. And still there's no guarantee that they won't get to you. So that's what that is. I don't know. It's kind of crazy out there. But, redemption is a powerful thing when you can find it. Redemption is a powerful thing when you can understand, what it entails. Because, the restrictions on you are even more, when you are redeemed, when you do have folks that are willing to be in your corner. Now you have very little room for error. See, the first time you mess up and make a mistake, that's one thing. But then when you're redeemed and you're given a second chance at life, oh my God, you better be on your P's and Q's because there's folks constantly watching what you're doing. there's people constantly, surveilling you, and it's not just behind the scenes or, from a distance. It's like in your face. It's like, oh, this is who you better be. This is who you need to be, or else, they kind of, lock you up and throw away the key. And I'm saying this just from knowing people that I know and certain things. Unless you're ready and willing, yeah. Unfortunately, Scott King, that's a situation that happens. You better learn to fight. You better learn to fight unless you're gonna be in a situation, in the prison. And then, like I said, it's unfortunate. So, you don't want to be in there trying to fight them off the booty, but that's what happens. So you better watch what you do out in these streets. Yeah, yeah. It's rough. It's rough. It's rough. And I'm probably gonna be going live for a few more minutes, just in case anybody was wondering and knowing. I seen some people out there in the private chats. I'm probably gonna come through like a hurricane, like hurricanes do, and definitely check you out. But this has definitely been an interesting live stream because I mean, redemption is not enough said about it because there are people who feel like, what, hey, I would never, I would never do that. I would never be that type of person, or I couldn't understand or fathom what people are going through. It's important to put yourself in other people's shoes because even if you're not the person that has that drug problem, even if you're not the person that's arrested, even if you're not the person that needs that level of redemption that, this young lady in the story got, from here, you know, people need to be redeemed from something. People need second chances on something, whatever it is that people are going through. And I say don't get so big for your britches and don't get so high-minded and prideful because of how you live your life as to say that, that can never be you. You can never be locked up. You can never be the person that does these things. Not to put it in your head and do it, but to say, hey, look, there's more to this. I understand that I'm an imperfect being and living in an imperfect world, just trying to make it through, just trying to see my way through the maze, through the muck and the mire, the hellacious world that could be out there. It could be a cold world sometimes, especially when you make mistakes, especially when you do things on purpose. It's definitely when you do things from a young mind. I feel bad for the kids that have done things when they were younger and then they get older and they get judged, so it is like that. So for her, prison was a second chance. Yes, her prison was a second chance for her. Let me read a little bit of what I was saying. It says Miss Rivera was living a life almost unfathomable, of unfathomable despair a year ago, sleeping inside of open-air heroin den in the South Bronx. The rail-thin Rivera spent her waking moments scrounging around for her next hit. She had just survived 2 overdoses. She weighed close to 100 pounds, and the veins in her arm were so badly damaged that she was injecting drugs into her neck. Rivera's agonizing existence was chronicled in the Daily News story on the horrors of the heroin epidemic in the South Bronx. Some 14 months later, Rivera is locked up at Rikers Island, and she is convinced that jail saved her life. The 39-year-old mother has received constant doses of methadone and other badly needed medications for the first time in years. So, she had a situation where she was arrested, for some crimes that she committed out there, but, she definitely was going through situations with struggling with sobriety, drug abuse and stuff like that. Man, listen, it's easy to tear yourself up. It seems like it's easy to find drugs, easy to find ways to take you down. So that's something that she felt like, when she went to jail, it saved her life. And one of the reasons why she was saying, Lulu, that jail saved her life was because she was getting the much needed medication and the much needed attention that, that had her looking like this, that definitely had her looking like this if you could see it. She almost looks very, unrecognizable, in the photo, from here. So she's definitely a different person, definitely a different person. So, it's definitely, crazy, sad to see people have to go through those type of things, but sometimes people lose control, sometimes people find themselves going off the railing, and, it's important for us not to judge from a distance, whether you want to, help a person get redeemed or forgive, whatever you're going to do. It's important not to judge, It's important to remember that even if that person is not us, even if we don't know that person, we have people in our lives like that, or people who know people like that. Yeah, it's a shame that she had to go to prison to get the help she needed, but that's what happened, Lulu. I mean, she definitely, at least that's what she felt, and maybe that was the situation. Sometimes, like when I first heard it, I probably thought it was the silliest thing I ever heard, where somebody has to go to prison in order to be saved, or go to prison in order to stop them from dying. And when you're out on the street, and you're doing things and stuff is going down, you start to realize that, hey, maybe there's something to that. Maybe it's something to somebody having to go to prison to stop themselves from continuing a destructive nature. Like I said, I know people personally, who probably need to get locked up to stop them from doing negative things, the stuff that they're doing in their life. And you don't want to hear that, because it's not the most positive thing to hear. It's not something people want to wrap their mind around. But what do? Prison works better than rehab for junkies. Yes, it does. It does. Prison does work better than rehab for junkies, because what happens is they can't have you in the prison relapsing. The last thing they want to do, at least nowadays, is have you dying in prison from an overdose, because now in the prison they have to explain how you got these illegal drugs inside of the prison. So you have to answer for that. So they're going to try to make sure that you're clean and sober as much as possible, in order to get you where you need to be. Now the question comes, like it said in the article, because she's supposed to be released within the week. Can you stay sober? Can you avoid the pitfalls and catching a hit and going back into that? So this is the second story that they've done on her. But she was chronicled in a story, I think, from a year or so ago, when it talked about the drug epidemic, up in the South Bronx, or in the Bronx specifically in New York, here in New York City, which is still, a problem, unfortunately. Not the biggest problem out there, but, drug abuse is something that may never go away. And, there's people who have demons and all kind of hellacious things that they're struggling with. And, for us that may not struggle in those ways, it's important for us to understand where people are coming from. This lady came from a broken home, a broken situation where things are not the way that they should be. But, in her situation, she could have made an excuse about it. She could be dead. She could not have taken care of herself, or found some illegal drugs in jail and, try to take it, whatever way it was going to go with that. So it's definitely it's definitely eye-opening. It's definitely eye-opening. And like I said, I don't do these live streams to depress anybody. I don't do these live streams to try to be extra deep. I don't do these live streams to annoy people, because I know some people, this may not be for them. This may be too serious for them. I do these live streams because there's one of you out there, whoever you are, there's one of you out there that need to hear this. There's somebody out there, whoever it may be. This may be for one person. I may just be talking to Scott King, which some people may think is a troll. I smoke pot every day. I was in prison though. yeah. I know about that, but that's different. You wasn't on no hardcore stuff, Hopefully not strung out. Not saying you was, but I do these live streams because this may be for one person. This may be for that one individual, that's going through something. This one individual that doesn't think that anybody cares, that anybody's paying attention. Because when you go on YouTube, yeah, it's great to find the DIY videos and the challenges, Kiki, do you love me? Are you riding? Anyway, it's easy to find, those videos. It's easy to laugh. It's easy to joke. It's easy to find the stuff entertaining. And it's not me just trying to be inspirational, just trying to be real. I know there are people out there, hey, who have these thoughts about themselves, or who have these thoughts about other folks, and I just try to relate and have those conversations. Maybe I'm the more serious side of what's going on YouTube. I don't know, because my thing is this: if there's negativity that exists on YouTube, if there's darkness, like Vinny G has said, there's a bottom rung of YouTube. There should be an upper deck. There should be an upper level, and you shouldn't have to have 1 million subscribers. You shouldn't have to have thousands of likes. I don't need millions of reshares to have something, a positive message. I don't have to be inspirational. I don't have to do what anybody else does. I don't have to sit here and sing songs and get extra spiritual with you, or give out money, or do anything, crazy to get you to say, hey, you know what? Maybe there's more to this life than what we think, and that's really what I try to do with these live streams when I'm not being silly myself. So I mean, for those people that it's not for you. I'm not mad at you. You don't watch, you don't support it. It ain't a thing for you. I'm not mad at you. I'll check you on the other side. But for those people that listen, those people that get something from it, for those people that could share, that argue, question, and explore, it is what it is. Yeah, no. I'm not worried about me getting there. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing, Scott King. But I appreciate that. My time will come. My time is here. My time to do whatever it is I'm gonna do with this thing is another story. I don't even think my day may be on YouTube, my greatest days. But this ain't about that. This is about the live stream that I'm at and what I'm doing right now. You're trying to stay humble and whatnot. This is really about, what these things are, the messages for this. Because I'm not trying to depress anybody. Only reason I'm taking the time to explain myself because I see a lot of you folks out there. I know you like to go to certain live streams. I know you like to be entertained, and I'm not mad at folks for wanting to be entertained. Go ahead and be entertained. Go ahead and do your thing. Go ahead and have those live streams that you have, or do the content that you have and whatnot. Go ahead, go get it. But for those folks out there that want to hear something real, for those folks out there that want to have real conversations and expand their mind and just talk about stuff, argue, question, and explore. I do these things. I talk about this stuff. I'm not always right with everything that I'm saying. I'm not always on topic, but I try to be real. Wherever I come from, I try to seek truth. I try to say, speak the truth to power, or, give somebody something. And then there was the man who refused to die. You need to get in touch with Oprah. Nah, I'm not a big fan of Oprah. I'm not getting in touch with Oprah. But I appreciate you, Patch. Hopefully everything is good with you. It's been a while. I'm really getting to the point where I'm wrapping up the live stream, but I was just talking about what I'm doing on here, Patch. I was talking about this story about redemption, a lady basically who was, went to jail, and after her going to jail, she felt like it was a second chance as far as dealing with her drug addiction and stuff like that. And I know that's a deep live stream. I know that's too deep of a subject matter for people to get into. I'll talk to you about it. Yeah, no, definitely. It is what it is, Patch. I'm gonna be around. I'm definitely gonna be around, brother. You could just text me, man. Just definitely text me. Hit me on the phone line. We could definitely talk there too. Yeah, nah, I got your number. I got your number. I gotta scroll through the text messages and whatnot. But definitely, yeah, nah, it's good to see Patch again too. But I'm still here, man. I got you on the Google Hangout. I got you here. Always a pleasure to see you and whatnot. Definitely we're gonna do some catching up. We're gonna see some things. I appreciate you, being there. I'm still in Patch's hold. That's what it is. Right now I'm trying to stay awake, but I'm grateful to you folks for being here, and hopefully you got something from this live stream. Hopefully it wasn't too serious from you. Hopefully it got you to argue, question, explore, to think, and whatnot. You like the first one I had really talked to. So yeah, well, listen, um, yeah. What I'll say about that, Patch, I'm sorry things went south, but I know there's a couple of people out there on YouTube who are probably going through some of the issues that, you may or may not, want to talk about, we'll get into one on a private setting, so there's a couple of people I know that are going through some things, and I'll take this time out to say to folks out there, who are going through some adversity and facing some challenges, be it online, offline, don't give up on yourself. Find people you can talk to. Find, ways to, get an outlet, even if you have to pray, if you have to meditate, if you have to take a walk, if you have to take a break, if you have to get counseling, do whatever it is I have to do. More people real need to be on here on a regular basis. I agree with you, Scott King. I definitely agree with you. And I was talking to somebody about that earlier. We do need more people to be them real selves on here on YouTube. There's too many people on this platform who are shucking and jiving and faking it and trying to make it, and the nonsense and the recklessness. And then they turn around and wonder why YouTube ain't what it's supposed to be. If you hear faking it to try to make it, or fake it till you make it, or you on here with the fake positivity or the drama and the negativity, I wish I had $1 for every person that said I'm not about the drama, but they was deep in the drama. And like I said, I'm not gonna get into all that because that's just what it is. So, but I agree with you, Scott King. We definitely need more real people here on this platform. There's definitely a lot of people who will make it challenging and hard to be here. Maybe I don't know, but like I said, I'm not trying to go into a rant. We do need more real people on here talking about real stuff. Because at the end of the day, you will be judged by the content that you put out there. Whether your content gets a whole bunch of views, whether it gets no views, whatever. Remember, whatever energy you put out there into the world, you will get it back in some shape, form, or fashion. You will get it back. So be careful what you do when you press upload. Be careful what you say when you press live. Be careful what you do when you're behind the scenes and you think nobody's watching. Be careful what you're saying in these chats when you're gossiping about people and talking. There's a lot of folks out there, you may think of your friends. There's a lot of people you may think that's in your corner that's really not. It's really not. So, on that moment, on that point, I'm going to back up. I don't want to get too excited myself. That's a good place to expand the mind. Thank you, Scott King. Well, you had a lot of great points here in the chat tonight. I got to wind down. I got to get some sleep. And no, I'm not taking any direct shots at anybody. So, or indirect shots, I hope. So, just speaking my piece. That's just what it is. So, on that note, I will say spread love. It's the Brooklyn way. For dramatic effect, I'm out. Good live stream. I got you, Patch.